the way my role's evolved with digital technology over the past couple of years has been phenomenal. So we've crafted a really interesting story for you today. It's around what top performers do to be operationally excellent, how they take that operational excellence and transform it into customer excellence. And then I want to give you an idea of what people are doing to be AI ready. What I've got up behind me is interesting. It is the top goals across persona. This is from an open text response at the start of our survey. And we can see that your top goal is acquiring and retaining customers. And when we unpack the text, there's actually quite a lot of cool stuff going on there. A lot around conversational commerce, a lot about using AI to deliver new outcomes for our customers. And we'll look at that a bit later. It's in the top 5 for the CIO. And that's the first time it's been there since before COVID. And that's really cool, because what it means is that the whole technology strategy is now going to be more geared towards meeting some of these customer expectations. We see it in the top 5 for the CIOs as well, and that's really interesting for the security leader. And there's 2 sides to that. The first is the importance of protecting data privacy to offset things like the risk of brand damage. The other side is experience expectations and balancing security with friction. Where we see a lot of organizations failing with their DevSecOps practice or integrated security processes is that security is just being brought in a little bit earlier. And the theme of today is cross-functional. And to really streamline experiences and that friction with security, they need to have a seat at the strategy layer and be involved throughout the entire process. Your second top goal is tech modernization and simplification. And that resonates through the entire executive layer. And it's linked as well to that customer expectations. If you're from, say, a financial institute, there's only so many times you can reskin your banking app without fixing the core banking system, without fixing the back-end payment platforms. Because we see it coming up so much across personas, I think that it's relevant to do a deep dive in terms of what top performers do to become more modernized. So we had a look at how modernized the infrastructure layer is, the application layer, how digitized operations are, and we found 3 really interesting things for organizations that are more further along their modernization journey. That first is, highly modernized organizations have consolidated over double the amount of applications in the past year. Remember, it was modernization and simplification. So we're focusing on the applications that can add the most value in our organization. In the context of digital, we see a lot of fatigue happening, particularly across things like collaboration software. You might have some things in Teams, some things over email. You might have a product team that's working externally on Jira, and then you're in a WhatsApp chat with the board. It's counterproductive. And Jim mentioned in a couple of weeks, we also have our CFO conference, and we're looking at things like streamlining financial reporting. Because they have an interest in using things like dashboarding to better understand what to strategically finance in their organization. Because the CFO role is moving more away from management accounting into commercial analytics, where finance is a strategic asset in terms of the investments they back in organizations. Once we consolidate, it's good to connect. And organizations that are highly modernized only have almost 3 times the amount of applications connected. This is streamlining to get a bigger view of the whole of business problem. It's developing single view of customer to understand things like customer journeys and where friction points are in the process. The last one I've highlighted, not because it has a higher rate of impact, but because it's quite interesting. Organizations that are highly modernized are twice as good at using technology to promote change throughout the organization, which means that there is a digital adoption, a human-centered design element to how modern tech impacts the rest of the org. So what do these top performers have in common to sum up? Well, they're simple, they're connected, and they're enabling the rest of the organization. And I realize for a lot of you, this is kind of obvious, because this sets the strategy layer of what we're trying to achieve and to get organizational buy-in to navigate our technology journey. Let's have a look at some of the action points that people do to develop value from their operational component through modernization. So we've had this term come up called operational excellence, which is a combination of efficient and effective. And three things that contribute to organizations that say they capture high value from operations is there. The first one is process simplification. And this is something that not a lot of us do enough of, is sit down, map out processes, understand where the friction points are before we start to re-engineer. When you scale that through APIs, you get a bigger view of how that process sits in terms of the whole business. And you get a bigger view of the whole business problem. You can then use workflow automation, which has traditionally been through things like RPA or orchestration, but increasingly more through generative AI to streamline some of those processes that have frictions in them. The reason why I'm explaining it to you like this is because while they're individually correlated, they're not mutually exclusive. These things work together to deliver that operational value. So what do people get that navigate through this journey? Well, they're far better at building in change management. They're better at prioritization because when you understand where the frictions are and you have more streamlined processes, you know which initiatives and which product sets will add more value. And you're much better at improving employee experience. Now, you might realize that I only have half a slide up. That's because we're going to talk about traversing a variable. Which is a statistical term, but it comes from a climbing term. Any of you that climb or ski or hike, you know that traverse means to move alongside the mountain. And we actually found a lot more than these three things that correlate to value from operations. The reason why I chose these three is because they have a very similar rate of impact to capturing value from customers. You probably need to take a little bit more of a customer view towards it though. Simplifying the process of buying, application integration in terms of single view of customer and how we deliver and obtain services from customers in a more streamlined way. But our model doesn't hold weight. What you need to do is you need to add in two more things. You need to uplift the digital executive literacy so that they see value in digital technology and driving outcomes, so they understand the context of digital as well. And then you need to double your channel interactions. Double them in terms of the products and services which are ordered through you and how you deliver them. And double in a lot of your organizations actually isn't a big ask. Now we have a model that holds weight. It's got balance. It predicts high, medium, and low value from customers with a good sense of accuracy across all industries. What do people generally get that navigate this journey? Well, organizations that perform highly in that value from customers area, they attain much better revenue from cross-selling because you're creating a platform which allows you to serve different products into the same customer. You're far better at innovation in terms of the products and services that you delivered in the past 3 years, productizing them and commercializing them. And if you're from a government organization, you're far better at reducing frictions in integrated customer service, which is important because a lot of the general marketing metrics like NPS doesn't necessarily work for government. Two things that tend to work really well is reducing frictions in services and having transparency in those services. When I think about an organization that navigated this journey really well, it was Service New South Wales. They had an issue that they were spinning up different digital products constantly to serve different siloed needs. When they took a step back and they moved from a project to a product mindset, things like the Service New South Wales app, they considered a product. And they integrated into it the digital driver's license, things during COVID, the QR check-in, and later they scaled it out to do with all of business, to do things like Dine and Discover vouchers, creating that ecosystem to deliver on customer outcomes. And my colleague here, Byron's going to be hosting 2 roundtables, so you have the option either before or after lunch in shifting from a project to a product mindset. That process simplification feeds both areas really highly because it's also an AI opportunity because when you understand where the frictions are, you know where you can use AI. You see someone manually copying and pasting something into an email, that's an AI opportunity. If you have a security professional triaging and sending through different requests, we have organizations now looking at that through large language models. But it's going beyond this process simplification. And I was listening to a podcast recently I want to share with you that's been talking about some of the creative aspects of AI.
Further, talking about AI helping businesses come up with entirely new ways to serve customers.
Next level.
Right. This isn't just about making things faster. It's about AI, like brainstorming for them.
So we're talking beyond basic automation here.
Way beyond. This is AI analyzing massive amounts of data, finding patterns and stuff that we as humans wouldn't even notice.
That's wild. So AI is basically handing them a roadmap to innovation they hadn't even dreamed of.
Exactly. It's like AI becoming this creative partner, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Pretty exciting, isn't it?
Super exciting, but I'm guessing there's a but coming.
Well, Gabby did bring up a bit of a reality check for us Aussies.
Oh no, what's the catch?
Data, or more specifically, how we handle it. Seems we Aussies have a bit of a data problem.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Gabby was pretty clear.
Pretty cool, right? That was AI voices. I'm sure a lot of you guessed. They have pitch, pause, tone. They're charismatic. They play off each other, which is important because that was unscripted. The only thing that was given to the large language model that we developed for this was a synopsis, one paragraph of this keynote that's going to be uploaded for marketing purposes. So there's an increased opportunity to use AI, particularly some of the lighter weight softwares, to deliver new expectations. So now that I've impressed you with my ability to use this technology, and seeing as I don't sugarcoat these things according to my podcast host, let's talk about how ready we are for AI. So this year, when we combine CIOs, Chief Data Officers, Chief Digital Officers, we have a sample of about 350 respondents. Who thinks that 50% of them are ready for AI this year? A bunch of pessimists. I kind of like it. How about 20%? 1 in 5 people. Thank you. We've got a couple of takers. 10%. 10% going once, going twice. Okay, cool. How about 0? Well, really close to that. On a simple scale of 1 to 5, 1 being completely unprepared to 5 fully prepared, we've got the CIOs on that side, CDOs on that side, about 18% in positive sentiment. So if you said 20%, you're right in terms of the positive sentiment. The amount fully prepared, we're not quite there yet. So what we can do with these sort of statistics is we can smash them together on macro sentiment, where we see that 20% of people feel prepared, 37% neutral, and 40% unprepared. The reason why I do this is because we have some common questions across surveys, and we get a more robust model in determining what puts people up in that top category. And there's a few interesting things. The first is organizations that have mature data governance are 3 times more likely to be in that category, which is about data quality, data ownership, and you've got Michelle Dennedy on later this morning who's going to talk about some of those best practice governance frameworks. We see organizations that are highly prepared for AI have a more mature data architecture. And in the context of a cross-functional team, surely there is a place on it when it comes to AI for the cloud and infrastructure leader. Because even if you're using software as a service, you still need the right network, the right data storage, the right transfer of information to underpin your AI initiatives. The last one, the big one, is organizations effective at data democratization are 7 times more likely to be in that prepared category. So again, we go back to this human element, the ability for us to serve information, and then the capability and the literacy behind people consuming that information. And according to our measures, the digital and the data literacy has remained stagnant over the past 24 months. So if you can uplift how people see the value of information and the competitive advantage in information to perform in their role, the more likely you are to have a more successful perspective towards AI. It's funny, we always talk about the 3 pillars of different technologies and digital, people, process, and technology. It looks like AI is no different. So a friend of mine, Michael Colo, who works with some of you, he's a brilliant mind when it comes to AI in Australia. He was at our office a few weeks ago and we took out a whiteboard and got some adapt data and we started drawing out what's the maturity curve and what's the process that people go through to be AI ready. And we decided on 2 axes. The first, the y-axis, is the cost to explain and align. It's the amount of effort it takes for you to get additional resources to get people on board. And on the x-axis is the organizational impact. Now, to do wider enterprise-wide transformations, it's much harder to get people on board than those small incrementations, but the potential impact is much better. Now, this is the interesting part. There is a cost to standing still. And a lot of us are trying to do more with less at the moment. And one of the things that we need to try to verbalize to the board and to the rest of the organization is that there is a risk to doing nothing. Standing still in this space is actually moving backwards, because in the rate technology moves, the way that we navigate our modernization journeys, a lot of us don't feel like we've made progress, even though we have. So some of us move towards this IT optimization, where we have modernization, we have simplification. We're starting to have a view of how data is not a cost sector, but a strategic asset to underpin some of those experiences, to drive outcomes. And we start to build the better data literacy. Maybe we do some low-hanging fruit, things like a Copilot or an internal GPT model for people to find answers. And then one of the issues is we try and jump up here. We have a look at organizations that develop those new operating models, that have this incredible capability to generate new revenue from innovation. A lot of us are trying to build the LLM models, even though that we don't feel prepared to harness AI. And we forget user adoption. We do things like say, here's your personal assistant. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to be 30% more productive tomorrow. Good luck. And then it's sort of a set and forget. And that 30% statistic is a little bit ridiculous. The optimistic projection is 10 to 25%, and a lot of our organizations are still going to miss that. So because we don't do the training, we don't have the support, we tend to fall back down. And we end up looking here. We need more alignment. We need more cross-department collaboration. We need to have that mature architecture, and actually AI needs to be better funded in our organizations. So what do people do to move from here? Because this is where 60% of organizations that we measure are at the moment. Well, you need more support. You need to rally more troops. More alignment between the IT and the business goals to bring people on board. You need to understand those processes that we described before, to understand where the friction points are, and align behaviors to business goals. To rally the troops on board, you need more of the executive team on board. So what do the absolute top performers do? The 5% that are right up the top. How do they push up to that final stage? There's a couple of things that we measure that they have in common. The first is they focus on the quick wins. So they develop proofs of concept that have very tangible, measurable business metrics. And you're about to hear from Ryan at Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, and they did some incredible things around large language models to rebuild APIs. And they had very clear measures like cost reduction, like application consolidation. The other thing that organizations do in this space is they shift the ownership of AI. So AI has typically sat with people like me in data. And while, yes, I'm a big consumer and user and builder of it, it's probably not right to sit with me. It might not be right for it to sit with digital or with the CIO either, because the teams aren't necessarily set up for that purpose. Really, for organizations that are succeeding in this, they either shift it to be an enterprise capability thing, which means it sits with the CEO, or they bring someone new in who's particularly focused around transformation and AI in the context of that. And then the team that underpins that, it's made up by us. It's made up by the digital, by the data, by infrastructure, and by security to make sure that it's secure, and there's a governance framework set up to manage it in terms of the ethics.